The speakers of the day. Uh, so, Tapa ma'am, good evening very much. Seeing you after a long time. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for joining. Abba ma'am, thank you for joining. Arvind sir, thank you so much for joining, sir. And we'll just wait for 2-3 more minutes that some other people are joining. They have just run up. So, we'll just wait.
Oh,
Abaji, namaste. Oh, we have met before. Right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, we've met more than once. In fact, I think we've met occasionally at various.
Yeah, but I think
But
that
I've heard,
MP,
yes.
MP Police Academy itself.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So
I heard you speaking there as well, and also, I think in one of the women's conferences, I heard you speaking.
Oh, so Vineet has been such a, cementing point for all these meetings. Yes.
True.
Is that Deepika? Do we have in Deepika today also?
I can't see her right now, but
Yeah.
just check. Yeah.
Because I haven't met her.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so. Oh, hi. Is that? Oh, no, Neha also.
Avanti, Neha and Avanti are there from IDF's Institute.
Okay.
Welcome, Neha. Can you recognize that Tapa Sanyal ma'am is there? And Ava ma'am and Arvind Tiwari sir. Neha and Avanti are with us as partners through IDFC Institute.
Okay.
So our Pracademic Lab is also having the privilege of the partnership with IDFC Institute, and they've done some really good work on law enforcement and governance related research.
I know my batchmate is there, Emin Reddy. He's a fellow of IDFC. And Dr. Vineet Kapoor was there for one of the talks, I think. Yeah. So it's a small world. Keep,
Yeah.
keep bumping into each other. Why
Yeah.
is it echoing so much?
Neha, we can't hear you. Neha, you are saying something. I think it's mute. Yeah. We can't hear you.
और मेरा voice echo कर रहा है. Why
No,
this?
Neha, now you think you can, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Thank you again, and really great meeting you, Ms. Sanyal. Thanks, Vineet, and the entire team for organizing this today, and look forward to the discussion today.
I think we'll begin now. Ma'am, you have the permission to begin. We have Anuradha ma'am also with us, our ADG training. Ma'am, should we begin now?
Please begin.
Okay.
You
So-
don't need my
So,
permission.
good afternoon, good evening to all of you. And today's roundtable under the JIVA roundtable series, virtual roundtable series, that is Justice, Inclusion, and Victims Access. This is the fourth day of the rendezvous on these issues, and today we have the topic as addressing vulnerabilities and exclusion through duty-bearing state, and law enforcement and protection of women, children, minorities, and the poor. We have a select list of speakers today. The panel is very illuminating, which has been central to mainstreaming many issues of law enforcement in different jurisdictions. We have with us Madam Sutapa Sanyal, who has been the DG of Uttar Pradesh, and she has headed the crime against women cell of Uttar Pradesh for a very long time, and has been instrumental in mainstreaming many practices and sustainable practices in law enforcement for the protection of women. Madam Sanyal is now associated with Kailash Satyarthi Foundation and Bachpan Bachao Andolan, and she has been working and advising them on this forum. So, along with women, what she says is 75% of the human population, that is women and children, their protection is her passion and her mission in life. So very welcome, ma'am. We have Professor Arvind Tiwari with us. He is a dean in the School of Constitutional Governance and Human Rights Education of Tata Institute of Social Sciences, a very eminent criminologist, a victimologist, and a human rights expert. Professor Tiwari has been instrumental in many police reform documents and mainstreaming uh, normative standards of human rights into law enforcement and policing. Professor Tiwari has authored a pioneering research project on uh, uh, first information report and police response mechanism, and has a critical approach on victim justice. Very welcome, Professor Tiwari, on this forum, sir. We have Madam Aba Singhal Joshi, who is a human rights lawyer and an activist in law enforcement and justice delivery across the justice sector. She has been a trainer of judicial officers, police officers, and been also instrumental in law and human rights and its interface with development and justice institutions across the. She's worked on labor rights as well as on mainstreaming capacities in human rights for the police officers, for the judicial officers. The list goes on. We are very proud to have all three of you, Madam and Sir, in this on this round table. And without wasting much time, I would invite you for the discussion. I before that I acknowledge all our esteemed guests today. We have who will be participating in this round table. We have Anuradha Shankar ma'am, who is the additional DG training of Madhya Pradesh, and has been very much instrumental in organizing this round table with a clear vision on mainstreaming justice and inclusion in policing practices. We have most of our partners, particularly IDFC Institute partners, Neha Sinha, Avanti Durani here from JPAL, Sudha Sattva Bhattacharya has joined us. Our community engagement is supported by some of our eminent social workers who work with clear interface with police, and Mr. Atul Shah is here. I acknowledge your presence, sir. Now, before we go ahead, I'll again like to introduce the subject of today's discussion, and that is addressing vulnerabilities and exclusion through a duty-bearing state, law enforcement and protection of women, children, minorities, and the poor. The structure of today's roundtable discussion would go this way. We'll first invite Professor Tiwari, then Madam Sutapa Sanyal, and then Madam Abha Singhal Joshi for their views on this issue. We would expect a 10-minute discussion by them, and after that we'll open the house for further discussion. So this way we have designed today's roundtable. I'll first now request Professor Tiwari to begin his talk on addressing vulnerabilities and exclusion, with particular reference to the research which he has done on the first response of the police and the critical outcomes of that research on this particular topic. Sir, I invite you now, please. We can't hear you, sir.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Good evening to all of you. Madam Radha Shankar ji, Madam Sanyal, Avaji, and esteemed participants of this discussion. I first, at the outset, I would like to thank Madhya Pradesh Police Academy because I could see because the way Academy is engaging with different kind of discourse. And you see, because I have also got opportunity to do some kind of training for the police officers. It is really whatever we are discussing in social sciences parlance or in academic debates, that what police is doing, what the police should do, and how police should behave with the vulnerable section of the society, all those things. So I really congratulate Madam Anuradha Shankar and all leadership at the academy level for initiating such a discourse. Now, as Dr. Kapoor has said, like if you'll see the concept of rights holders and duty bearers. Now, state, if you'll see the overall human rights framework, international human rights framework, then the national human rights framework, the constitutional mandate, and the jurisprudence which is developed through the by the apex court, Supreme Court also, it says very clearly that the state and the state agencies would be the duty bearers, and the peoples are in right. They are the rights holders. So in any democracy, peoples are the rights holders, and this is the responsibility of the state and state agencies to protect the right of the people. So this is one aspect which is important, and law enforcement being at the forefront of the protection of the rights of the people has the more responsibility to protect the vulnerable and also excluded society. Like vulnerable, who are the vulnerable groups? We'll see that the discrimination which have been there in our socio-cultural, economic, and religious structures, and the patriarchal structure, which has been percolating down to our behavior pattern also. And that is the reason, so that we have, you see, the discrimination against women. Now we can say the gender you see, discrimination, then children, then scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, senior citizens, disabled, sexual minorities, all these groups. Although the Constitution, our preamble says that the socio-economic and all rights should be protected, dignity should be maintained of the each and every person. And then we have fundamental rights, we have directive principles of state policy, we have the fundamental duties also. So if we'll take in cumulative the Bill of Rights and the constitutional mandate, this and the special and local laws which have been enacted by the parliament on several subjects pertaining to the children, women, senior citizens, disabled, sexual minorities, and the Supreme Court judgment. If you will see in 2018, like several judgments, but Sabrimala judgment was there, then Navtesh Singh Johar judgment was there. Several judgments which have also taken forward the human rights and inclusiveness debate in our country. So now the exclusion which is emerging through these structures, these have to be basically addressed by the law enforcement agencies through the rule of law, because they are the enforcers of the rule of law. However, also the society also should take responsibility of this, because all crimes which are like, as Dr. Vineet Kapoor has mentioned, in my study also, which I have done for PPR&D around 6-7 years back, you see, in 8 states this study was done, and you see, the response of the police was positive in majority of the cases, although FIR in some of the cases were not registered. But still, people feel that when they have gone to the police have heard them in majority of the cases. So this exclusion which is emanating through this structural discrimination and patriarchal discrimination, how to address that? That is one point. Then gender-based violence, the Burma Committee report, and then Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013 and 2018 have also included this sexual offenses and the punishment is enhanced. Despite that, if you see the data by National Crime Records Bureau, the number of crimes are increasing. There may be two interpretations. One interpretation could be that the now more women are coming forward to report the crime, and therefore the number is increasing. And another interpretation would be that the number of crimes are still increasing, despite having the stringent legal provisions. So where is the problem? Whether enforcement of laws is the problem, or the the delay in the disposal of the cases, and we know the entire this is one of the subsystems within the criminal justice system. The delay in disposal of the cases, the kind of prosecution, and the use of forensic tools, etc., for investigation, then protection to victims and witnesses, that is also questionable in several cases. So looking into all these aspects, there is a need, what I consider, that the mandate of police and democratic policing is increasing. Like in several judgments, two judgments I'll quote: Saktivani versus Union of India in 2018, and Tehseen Poonawala versus Union of India. In both the judgments, preventive, remedial, and punitive measures have been directed by the Supreme Court of India. Now, the police, if you see, the vacancies are there, and the infrastructural problems are there, and the preventive policing, which is one of the important aspects and functions of the police, is somehow, I feel, is now not being given that kind of attention, like the broken window theory we have in criminology. So that kind of, it is not that deliberately they may not be doing, but sometimes maybe because of vacancies or because of the priorities and the Supreme Court judgment directions in Prakash Singh case are not largely implemented regarding the separation of law and order and the investigation. So looking into all these perspectives, what I feel that there is no dearth of normative structure. So there is advisories have been issued by the MHA on all these issues, how police should address such kind of issues. And National Family Health Survey round 5, we'll see now the preliminary results have come. The domestic violence is a serious problem. And many women, 25-30% women, they have accepted, yes, domestic violence is happening, and somehow there is some acceptance also that, yeah, this is happening somehow, what to do. And I mean, so what I would like to say essentially, we have to work at multiple levels. So regarding, I'll just take 2-3 minutes and then I'll wind up. Like human rights framework, as it says, that it has 3 perspectives. Respect. Respect means to avoid violation of rights. The person should respect. Protect, to prevent others from violating rights. And next is fulfill, to provide positive assistance for the people, those who are coming. So police has more responsibility in all of 3, but third, fulfill is more giving obligation on the police and the responsibility on the police to take up such issues. We have several social welfare legislation. In policing, whatever I understood so far, you see, there is the inherent subculture also, that the social legislations and the policing regarding these vulnerable sections, and that is not considered in the mainstream of the policing. Now it is slowly coming to the center stage of the mainstream policing. So somehow I think there is a need to also revisit the subculture of the organization. Number 1. Number 2, the effective enforcement of laws according to the rule of law, that has to be ensured. Accountability of duty bearers should also be ensured. And then also advocacy. We need to do advocacy with the other opinion leaders, the religious leaders, the social leaders, and other kind of groups in the society, because these crimes are emanating from the social, cultural, economic, and religious structures. Therefore, we need to engage with them also. And also partnership with the civil society organization is required. Although community policing and several efforts are being made by the police department, but I think that should not be based on the welfare model. It should be based on the human right approach, that the community's requirements, what are the community's need, and accordingly the community policing has to be contextualized, and community policing should be acknowledged also in the performance appraisal, and also that should be the one of the parameters for reviewing the performance of the officials, particularly at the ground level and the supervisory officers at the district level. And finally, I would like to submit that the public education about constitutionalism and also fundamental duties, rights, of course, we need to reach out to the people, but the constitutional aspect, what is the constitutionalism, and also regarding the fundamental rights and duties, if this public education is given at all levels, lifelong learning through adult education, through regular school education, and through other ways, also in a simple kind of language, local language, in simple ways, I think this will pave a long way in protecting the rights of the vulnerable and marginalized section of the society. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your views on this and for giving us this framework of respect, protect, and fulfill. Respect, protect, and fulfill are definitely the guiding principles over which the police forces must act, and all in law enforcement must act. So thank you so much for that. We'll take it up once we go ahead in our discussion. Next, we'll be inviting Sutapa Sandal ma'am, to give her views on this aspect. Before that, ma'am, as you mentioned, I can now see M.N. Reddy sir with us. So M.N. Reddy sir, madam is your batchmate.
Where is he? Anyway, I mean.
So we were like we were expecting that you would join today, sir. So thank you very much, sir. Thanks, sir, for joining, and it has been such an important support from your side, sir. Thank you. So I'm happy that we are becoming a forum for the batchmates to meet. So that's also a good thing.
You're doing a lot. You're generating a lot of collaterals.
Yeah. So I'm so happy about that. So now, ma'am, we'll be very much looking forward, particularly with your work on security for women and children. We would like you to throw some light on addressing vulnerabilities and exclusion.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Vineet. And good evening to Anuradha. I wish I had the opportunity of meeting Deepika too, virtually, of course. So good evening to everybody. And, all the sections of society that you've mentioned in the topic for today's roundtable, they actually are obviously vulnerable sections of society. So I will be kind of working around and talking about the policing aspect of law enforcement and looking at women and children, because that is my area of work and passion and interest. And policing, yes, 3 decades plus, that is what I've been doing for the past 30 plus years. Professor Arvind has touched upon a lot of things which I also was thinking of touching upon. So I will be kind of maybe repeating some and amplifying the others, right? So without much ado, let me dive into the topic. Well, if we look at the data today, it's very disconcerting. You have the data of 4 to 5 women being raped every hour, right? 5 children sexually abused every hour, 3 children raped every hour, 142 million children in child labor. Just imagine. 12,000 children being trafficked, 50,000 women being trafficked annually, right? And so many going missing. Even in fact, by the time we finish 1 hour of a round table, around, I think, 12 children would go missing. And just 2-3 of them are going to be found. They're going to be traced. Where do these other children go? They are trafficked into labor, into domestic servitude, into whatever you can think of. You know, human ingenuity has no end. The devil in human beings has no end. So you can think of the kind of, trouble and the kind of trauma they undergo. So that is it. And then on top of this, you have poor conviction rates in cases of women, worse in children in POCSO cases. And yes, and there was a study in 2007 by the government and NGOs and UNICEF too, I think was there, or Plan India. And they found out that 52% of the children, now I'm talking of 2007, were abused, and many of them badly sexually abused. Now, these are reported cases we are talking of. The unreported ones may be one, I really don't know, a black hole we may be staring at. And on top of this, during COVID, since children are largely online, because that's what the curriculum, etc., is being disseminated through, and women are also online, right? Crimes against both these vulnerable sections have increased. They have gone up exponentially. So, you know, if we take a look at the provision of the wonderful laws that we have, the civil laws, the criminal laws, and the Constitution, well, we must be having the best of laws in the world, and maybe the best Constitution in the world. So why is it, what is it that there is a gap between the theory and what is actually happening on the ground? It is a given fact that violence against these vulnerable communities, and many of them are, at the intersectionality of each other. It is across the world. Violence is very high against these vulnerable communities by definition that they're vulnerable, right? So, you know, unfortunately, despite all these laws, we need to understand what is it? What is that small thing which is preventing from these laws, wonderful laws, into translating at the grassroots level? Well, now, if I ask people in the audience, when you think of stakeholders, you know, in this process of protection to women and children, who comes to your mind? It will be the police. Obviously, they're first responders in many cases, but because of the uniform, they are the most visible arm of governance. Then you will have maybe the judiciary, the prosecution, right? But then why do we forget that there are DCPUs, DCPOs, who is a focal point in child-related issues? There's the CWC, there's the JJB, there are the panchayats, the legal service authorities, the NGOs, teachers, schools, parents, family, everybody. And if there's somebody who has not been included in this, why we as citizens, are we not responsible for the well-being and the protection of our fellow citizens? Somewhere, individuals, as well as, you know, individually and collectively, we have failed the women and children of our society. And that is something which we should never, ever forget, right? So what are the basic challenges and the fault lines which I can think of, which is preventing the actual translation of these wonderful and strong laws onto the ground? The first is a couple of systemic barriers which I can understand, which is actually preventing this. Now, you may or may not agree with what I am saying or the solutions which I will propose, but I think on such forums, it's good to hear out everybody and then arrive at a consensus so that we act as the magnets of change in society. We lead the change, right? First thing is shortage of people. shortage of staff, whether it's police or the judicial system or the legal services authority or CWC, everywhere there is a shortage of staff, shortage of capable people also. If we look at the national, police citizen average, it's about one police personnel per 900 citizens. And that's a huge thing. What does that one guy do everywhere? Not only that, and please understand that I don't hold a brief for police department, right? I will only speak what I have observed, right? And it cuts across other departments also because, as I said, everyone is a stakeholder. Then, multitasking and multiple tasking. That is what the police people have to do. And each type of work requires an entirely different pattern of policing, an entirely different mindset, entirely different skill sets. Right? The third thing is, as a result of these issues which I have mentioned above before, the vulnerable communities, they kind of, slip down the priority of day-to-day policing. Children have no voice at all. There is a strong culture of silence and a strong culture of victim blaming, which prevents women from going to the police station, right? And these are typical outcomes of patriarchy and misogyny, which has been intergenerational, not that it has sprung up overnight, right? And then, there is strong internalization of the narrative which is floated around in society. Women feel that and many women whom I have spoken to, they say that, so what? If my husband beat me, so what? I didn't give him food at the right time. Now, this is the level of internalization. Then there are weak victim and witness protection protocols, long drawn out battles, especially in cases like domestic violence, which is very, very, very prominent in our society. And then going back for that woman who complains, she goes back to that same embattled existence at home. Where does she go? The property rights are not functional at the ground level. She does not own anything. There's no asset ownership for a large number of women in this country. And then, I feel that the justice delivery system or law enforcement doesn't function in a vacuum. The people who are manning or womaning these organizations, they also come from that same milieu and they mirror the same milieu. So that is another impediment. So now, let me go back to the beginning and let me say that we need a multi-stakeholder, a multi-sectoral approach. And why? Because the architecture of most of these laws related to women and children, they depend on the convergence principle. And if things are not working out at the ground, it is because all these agencies, all these stakeholders are working in silos. Where do you get that synergy? Where do you get that critical mass, which brings in social change, that escape velocity? That is what is missing. We need to work together. Of course, we need to fill up the vacancies, which I spoke of. And of course, recruiters need to focus on diversity and inclusion, not only because of the different competencies which diverse people bring into an organization, but also because if there is no inclusion, that organization is not sustainable. It won't sustain for long. So these are the imperatives of today's format of recruiting or growth of organizations. And somehow in police also, we need to bring in these practices. There are a lot of unconscious biases, implicit biases, which recruiters start with. Those things need training. Those things need to be cleared off so that the talent pool which comes in is diverse, inclusive, and competent. And then train them. Train them in the softer skills. Hard skills, they will find out. They are tech savvy. The new generation is tech savvy. Tell them about the soft skills. What do we need today when we are dealing with vulnerable sections? I feel we need the soft skills of empathy. We need compassion. We need to step into the shoes of the victims or survivors and understand the trauma they are undergoing. Laws will fall into place. This is what is required, the attitude, the mindset to help the victim who is standing in front of you, the vulnerable person who is just standing there and who has nobody else to go to except you. So that is what we need to bring in and change the narrative, these antiquated narratives which we have in police. We have to change them. You know, my experience with policing with reference to women and children, which Dr. Vineet was talking of, somehow, you know, eggs me to say that we need to reimagine policing today. It has to fit into the requirements of the current times, and we need a paradigm shift. There is a need to adopt a more participative, empathetic, and compassionate format of policing, something which is so contradictory to the image of a successful police officer. The gender-sensitive and child-friendly policing module of community policing, based on the public-private partnership, which I tried to do through the UP Police Mahila Samman Prakoshth way back in 2014 to 17, was quite effective, and I could see the green shoots. And I can give you 10 reasons why community policing works. Because after all, if you engage the community in policing, you will be doing the kind of policing which the community expects you to do and which you need to do. The community feels its own responsibility. It wants to work with you, but you will have to take the first step because they're scared. All along, mothers and family members have told the child, "Bachcha so jaane do, police aake pakad legi." So that is the image. Then out of the box thinking you can do, you can customize your policing to the needs of the area in which you're policing. You can get lots of resources. Different people, different segments of society have different competencies. Everything can come together and that critical mass can be generated. So community policing is a very, very important format and the requisite format. And it's not just altruism. It is also pragmatism today to shift to community policing so far as these vulnerable groups are concerned. Mainstream policing can still be the traditional format, right? So now I would also like to suggest a radical thinking, but do think about it. Do you feel, at least I do, that the time has come to develop a dedicated, separate cadre for policing of women, children, and other vulnerable communities? We need to streamline all the systems we have in place and look at this aspect also, because this kind of policing requires a lot of specialization, right? And I feel that Adam Smith wasn't stupid when he spoke about division of labor and specialization. The same principles apply here. With that, I will end. I think I've overshot my time, but then we need to do a little bit of design thinking in policing also. We need to reimagine, we need to reinvent the kind of policing that is required today. And each one of us, going back to where I started, we are all stakeholders in the process. And we can do a lot. Wherever we stand, whatever we are, we have to do our bit before it becomes too late. So thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for highlighting certain very, very crucial issues in policing and addressing vulnerabilities. And your idea of having a separate cadre itself makes a great sense. Yeah, okay, I'll reserve it for our discussion later on. But I would like to inform you that Madam Aruna Mohan Rao, who's our special DG, joined in, and I welcome you, ma'am. And she had been listening very intently to your suggestion. And so has Deepika Suri, madam, who's IG Crime Against Women.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah,
Hi,
so,
both of you.
you were keen to meet them on this forum, so they are very much there, and I hope we'll have some discussion to them also, because both of them have been at the key positions in the crime against women section, and Aruna ma'am has now been seeing both these branches, training as well as crime against women, and we'll have some discussion over that. Now, I would I'd request Madam Aba Singhal Joshi to give her views on the addressing vulnerabilities. Looking at her rich background of police training, particularly she had been a resident tutor at National Police Academy, teaching human rights and CRPC and inclusion issues at NPA for a number of years, and also with the state police in Haryana, in Delhi, in Madhya Pradesh, in different other states, including Rajasthan. I would request ma'am to speak on the challenges of capacity building to address vulnerabilities, particularly for the police officers. I would just narrate one incident. So when we started with this Urja Help Desk approach in 180 police stations in Madhya Pradesh, and we requested our madam to design our training curriculum, and some of the stakeholders in the group insisted that we reduce the gender component of the training time, so that SOP is done more vigorously. So, like Madam had initially designed a half day only on the gender understanding of the gender concept for the different participants of the help desk, and rest of 2 days were spent on SOPs. So the stakeholders said, no, let's have just half an hour on gender, and let's do like full 2 days on the SOP itself. And after 2 months, the same stakeholders who were in our partners came up and said that it's not doing any good, because the gender concept itself was not clear to most of those people who were asked to do the implementation of the SOP. So she has that context, and with that context in mind, I would request Aba ma'am to share her views. We can't hear you, ma'am. Low and mute speaker.
You'll have to unmute yourself.
Yes, yes, yes. I thought I
Yeah,
was
now.
unmuted. Sorry. Thank you. So first of all, of course, I mean, I really have to be grateful to you for this absolutely mesmerizing, kind of uh, fora that you put together. And it's been many years. I mean, even, the human rights workshops that we did together across Madhya Pradesh, that was so many years ago, and now this. And I must say that I do really belong to um, a platform where there are constables and ASIs and this thing, but this is of course also an additional privilege, and I'm really so grateful. And I was so caught up in listening to Dr. Tiwari and Ma'am Sanya that I quite lost thread of what I was actually going to say. But yes, thank you for encapsulating, sir. It's a little bit, whenever I speak on this particular thing, and policing is somehow, somewhere along the way in my work as a lawyer, it became very dear to me, for the sheer reason, the kind of impact that it has on the people. I always felt that two things impact the people of this country maximum. One is land, and the other is policing. So whoever is on top of these two issues, if you can, this is something that one can do, and if you crack these two, some part of the understanding, they're so deep and so, there's so many threads to them that, I mean, one is privileged, I think, to know a little bit of it. So to come back to capacity building, and we had this discussion yesterday also. And like I said, that over the years, I mean, I would not, I mean, attribute some of it to age, maybe, and some of it to because that's my profession. But I have become a little dogmatic about using the law for capacity building with diverse stakeholders, whether it's the public and especially the police, because the gap that you find there, and sir, like you said, even yesterday that question was there, that do you include, and I think Sandeep had said the same thing what you said, which I didn't know about this. Because I do remember that phase when the SOPs, were insisting that just go through the SOPs and that's it. So unless there's a background and unless there's a connect, and they make that connect very fast. But my experience has been that you're not talking to, you're not talking to some people who have insensitivity in their DNA, or who cannot understand issues. You're actually talking to a group of people whose, for some reason, the sensitivity or the ability to use that sensitivity for the response has somehow just got compressed so much that it's really actually got petrified. So to open that up and to immediately to link it up with what you're supposed to do as and where you are, I think that is the capacity building what every person who goes in for a dialogue. I mean, I would call them dialogues only because it can't be a top down, because what they know, we don't know really the whole picture. So it has to be a dialogue in which they are speaking to you and coming out with their fears and with their hesitations. Because when a response is expected, what I've seen is that when a response is expected from the police, the immediate thing is the accountability to the hierarchy. Their anxiety is more accountability to the hierarchy than to the law. So how do you bridge that gap? I mean, is there some way that that can actually be brought together and explained, that by an accountability to the law and by doing the legal process, you are equally servicing the hierarchy. You're not going against it. You're not challenging the hierarchy, but it has to be spelled out in very clear terms. And to tell you my own personal experience of whatever work I've done with the police. So one of many years ago, my favorite reading had become the Punjab Police Rules. And since then, whichever states that I am going into for any this thing, I do look up the police manual and the police rules, because that is what speaks to a policeman. It's the nitty-gritty that is embedded. So if you're able to connect the action with one of the things that they are completely into, and the whole spectrum that Dr. Tiwari spoke about and Ma'am Sanyal spoke about, that how do you correlate the whole concept? Now these rules are, they are colonial legislation, but in the context of the constitution, if you place it in a context and say, today this rule means only this, that every segment has to be protected. Every person who comes to you has to be protected. There's no, and so that's what we did, sir, that when we do the capacity building, you come out with such case studies that are very evocative, and they quickly move on to the application of the law and the applicable rule. So you immediately ask the question that, which law would you place this in? अब आप क्या करेंगे इसके अंदर? कोई आपके पास ऐसे आता है तो आप क्या करेंगे? And sometimes they know it and sometimes they don't know it. So in the thing, they will generally go to the criminal procedure, but where the special laws are concerned, they are foggy about that. So I think the capacity building must include very practical stuff about, what these laws. So you move on. The trigger is the constitutional background. So you use an evocative case study. And there are so many evocative. I have never used particularly case studies which are outside the judgments. The judgments and the cases themselves give you so many case studies that you don't have to. Nobody has ever stood up to me and said that oh, this doesn't happen. ये ऐसे आप कैसे ऐसे बोल सकते हैं, ऐसा तो कभी होता नहीं है. We showed them, here it is, it has happened. this has happened, and I'm just telling you something which is very much part of the documented legal history in the country or in the state, or you can even get better and come down to that particular district. So, so this gap has been, and they do respond. The response to this particular thing, to using the law, first the resistance. So you must know, as people who are into capacity building, we must know that there will be that graph. First, the resistance, because the number of times that I've heard at all levels, from DG, from constable to DG, that कानून से अगर काम करेंगे तो हम कुछ कर नहीं सकेंगे. कानून की बात अलग है, प्रैक्टिकल अलग है. So, and then when you start demonstrating that कानून में और प्रैक्टिकल में कोई फर्क नहीं है, it's exactly the same thing, it'll just make your life easier, and you are also saving yourself, going by the law. Leading to that is the other thing that needs capacity building is the ability to document. So the ability to document is so poor that the poor things, they're not able to reflect their good faith in that. And I just give a carte blanche that, look, if you are able to demonstrate good faith in your documentation, even if you make a mistake, even if somebody makes a complaint later on, you will be protected because you have just done it in good faith. You have just documented. So documentation is a very big gap which one finds, that they are not, and they are scared to put pen to paper. They just want, कि किसी तरह से वो manage हो जाए. हमें लिखना ना, लिखने के पहले they think so much. So I think this is something which the higher cadres of policing and at the policy level, they have to consider that, how do you actually empower people to document well, so that, it is off their table and they are doing it, imbibing all those statutory provisions. So I often get calls on some very, they're simple to us, but they're very complex and scary for people who are at the desk. For example, for vulnerable, if you just take the question of women, children, young girls who are young pregnancies by rape, कि इसमें क्या करना चाहिए, हमें किसकी परमिशन चाहिए. तो इफ यू टेल देम कि किसी की परमिशन नहीं चाहिए, वो माइनर है, आप उसके पेरेंट्स की काउंसलिंग करो, और सबसे पहले उसको, you must get that abortion done, because you're losing time every day that you're losing. You're putting this little child, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old into. So that kind of a thing, I think, to identify the vulnerabilities within a sector, also identify that what are the typical kind of matters which come to the police, and then like ma'am said, that there's not just the police, there's also the CWC, the JJ board, but sometimes I think police does also find it difficult to this thing. But then this Gulmohar and Urja desks are classic examples of how that can also be overcome, because you're giving everybody an easier platform to function out of. For example, the protection officers, if they don't have to run around so much, and if they know that there is a platform, they would rather function out of an Urja desk than back at the department, where they're also there's a lot of confusion and there's nobody to help them out. So then again, just to wind up, I would say that capacity building must be a marriage of the evoking that sensitivity and to acknowledgement that yes, these problems are very much there. Ma'am spoke about trafficking, which is again very, very close to my heart, and I'm petrified on this issue, because it is overtaking us by leaps and bounds. I mean, there's no cutting back on this. And therefore, if we suppose we talk about trafficking itself, if we are able to communicate that, just simply what is it, that vulnerability, what are and they're very clearly researched, what are the signs of vulnerability of a person who could be potentially trafficked, and then you build it into your beat system or your community policing system, that okay, if you see there is a child, without, if you see a single parent, if you see a child who's being abused at home, here is your, they must come onto your radar, so that can be identified as a potential victim or a person or a woman who can be trafficked, who could be trafficked. So, I mean, I was just trying to demonstrate that, this collapsing law and the what is called sensitization, though I don't think I anymore agree to, having interacted with so many police personnel, that the sensitization means creating sensitivity. Then it's just digging up that latent sort of awareness, which because of the pressures of the work and all that, it somehow gets. But when you demonstrate to them that you can bring together both of them, and it's all embedded in the law. It's totally and more embedded in the law. You just use that provision, and you will be, doing everything that the Constitution of India requires of you. Because that's all you need to do. You follow the law, give relief, then you would be, catering to the constitutional and the human rights requirements. So that is something that one has been trying to do. I think I'm going to stop now, just in case if there are any questions, then we can save some time for that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your valuable comments on different aspects of capacity building and the wide range of issues which you touched upon in terms of capacity building of the police officers and the impediments which we encounter. Now I'll open the house for discussion. We would expect questions and observations and inferences based on these viewpoints which we just heard. So I'll now invite questions from our participants. Before anybody speaks, I would like to talk to Sutapa ma'am regarding her experience based on crime against women and children. And why do you think there is a need of a separate cadre itself? Why do you think that, because this would be a very, very debated issue within policing, within law enforcement, within the government itself. So I would like to know your views on that.
Yeah, it will be debated. But what I have understood while looking at these vulnerabilities and the way the laws are being structured. Why is so much echo of them?
No, ma'am, there is no echo. It's good. Yeah.
No, it's the echo is coming to me, and it's so irritating to keep hearing your own voice. Because this work is actually related to victim-sensitive policing. What we normally do is accused-centric policing. So now this is a big mental shift. Now you think of a police personnel, right? He is there. He's just come back from his law enforcement duty and he finds a child in front of him, right? Who is standing there so vulnerable, sexually abused with nobody to go to. Now, as human beings, it becomes very difficult. We are only looking at the police officer as a policeman or a policewoman. What about the human being? How difficult it is to make such mental shifts in the drop of a hat. And then all these laws, all the finer aspects of the POCSO Act, the JJ Act, it's a whole big architecture. You think it's an easy job for the same police guy to sit there and write the GT, go out with a danda, do the law enforcement work, look at the Mela side, look after the VIPs, do VIP duty, and then come back and suddenly address the child in the manner in which the law expects him or her to address the child. It's not easy. So what we need to do is we need to take a relook at these things. Of course, merits and demerits, pros and cons, and I'm sure this platform can be one great place to look into this. And there is no harm if we can have a traffic department. Then why doesn't civil police or armed police do all the traffic policing job? Because it needs a particular kind of, we are putting too much burden on that person and too much of a mental shift, too much of an, one type of attitude and then totally different attitude when you're dealing with a survivor or a victim like a child, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old. Then women, right? And I'm not saying that this cadre will only be of women. That is another, that is another wrong thing. That will be a wrong step. You have to have men also. And there are lots and lots of sensitive men in the police force. Abhaji spoke of, capacity building. When I was doing this community policing thing, the program designed for training police people, I named it Nav Chetna. Because I know that Chetna is there, but somewhere, due to the kind of exposure they have day in and day out, see, it's not a very happy thing to be dealing with murderers and rioters and guys doing arson, etc., etc. And then suddenly make the shift and become all compassionate and all empathetic when a child comes in front of you or a woman comes in front of you who has been battered, traumatized, raped badly, burnt. That is why I'm saying that we need a group of people, a group of police officers who will only be doing this thing. And then again, I said about Adam Smith and the division of labor and the art of specialization. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you become a specialist. You keep doing it better. You get better by every day. And then again, 75% if you add up women and children. So we need to think about this. Of course, I know when I say this thing, I know there's a lot of opposition to it, but then I think the time has come to give it a thought rather than when in the future, we are forced to shift to this. It's better that we foresee things. It's better we come out of the state of denial that, okay, everything is hunky-dory in the way it has been existing from 1861. So we need to talk about these things. Not necessarily that what I'm saying is 100%.
No.
Need
Yeah.
to
Thank you, ma'am, for clarifying this issue. We have IG Crime Against Women with us from Madhya Pradesh, Madam Deepika Suri. I would like to know her reaction to this particular interjection. As a police officer, we need more views on this. Madam Suri, if you can hear us, please, ma'am, we'd like your reaction on this.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. So, ma'am, that's one does understand that it's actually very essential to have some kind of specialization. But I also understand that there may be an imperative. It's very difficult for people to shift gears, like do one kind of work at one point of time and another kind. And somehow, in my heart, also, I feel that right at the Thana level, there should be specialization. People should be there for different sorts of jobs. Thana should not be just one place where you have just anybody doing any kind of job. So Thana is the place for specialization. But at the same time, I do not feel that there should be a separate cadre, because there is, I guess, in even if one is acting with an accused, if one is doing other kinds of duties, that degree of sensitivity is required everywhere. So making a separate cadre is like saying that we have a sensitive part and we have a ruthless part. I think even in terms of investigating or investing time and energy in crimes against women, one will be dealing with accused, one will be dealing with many other aspects that are there of investigation. So while one does understand that people should be deputed at the Thana level, at other levels for a certain specific duty, and this needs specialization. If we have rape investigators, they should be trained before they can touch a rape case. They should be actually trained as to how the modalities have to be done. But having a totally chopped off cadre is something maybe I may not be convinced about. And I think having that sensitivity all along is something that I would also emphasize. So that's my reaction to it. Thank you.
I think you're right. You're right. But you know what has been my experience? I have seen that we have these SGPUs, we have these AHTUs, right? But then what happens is the same person, he is on paper everywhere and then doing nothing about it, because his main site is the mainstream policing. That is the reason. How we will actually do it needs to be figured out, right? Yes, you're right. You have a very strong point. But I think what I said is it needs to be looked into. It needs, because times have changed. Times have changed. And it's becoming a farce if you have just on paper X person in SJPUs also, HTUs also, and also at the all other points and all the duties which that person is expected to do. We have these Mahila help desks, right? So somehow if we could streamline this entire process from bottom to top and have a very robust kind of MIS, you have a technical background. So this kind of stuff which I'm suggesting, maybe with an add-on of a robust monitoring, evaluation, and reviewing system, something, but we need to think about this in a very, very deep way. That is what I actually meant. We need to think about it, and if the pros are more, then we should try. And there's no harm in trying at a, in a pilot project stance. It's not necessary that you roll out across. Let's see, let's try it at a small place. Let's try it in a small commissionerate. Let's see what happens. Maybe if the gaps are identified and if we could fill up the gaps, we could come up with a third kind of dimension. Who knows? Maybe not what is existing, maybe not what I am saying, maybe a third via media. But we need to do something about it. What the present system is not serving the purpose, Deepika. This is the problem. We need to look at it here. And this could be a great platform, the kind of work MP Police is doing. This could be a great platform to think about it, try things out.
Ma'am, that way might be a very good initiative. And we're planning to scale that. It was operative in around 200 odd places. Now we're trying to take it to 700 thanas, and with kind of standardization and also predictability of the kind of reaction that will be there, and committed force in as far as we can have it.
Yeah, maybe that is the via media, who knows? But we need to focus on this issue. What is happening currently will not help. It's not helping. It's not helping.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Deepika, ma'am. Thank you, Sutapa, ma'am. Any other reactions to this or to any other viewpoints on this round table? I would.
Hi, Vinitji.
Ji.
There's Satya here.
Yeah,
I just wanted to come in. I wanted to come in here the point with Deepika ji and Sutapa ma'am flagged in. In fact, working in this space on trafficking, we have always been seeing that you train anti-human trafficking officers, but tomorrow when you go to the same police station, you don't find them again. You find a new person, and I know what all investment has gone into it. He's not the one who is disposing the duty. And I think it's a great idea that what Sutapa ma'am just flagged in. And in fact, there are some example for instance, like in Bihar, they created a cadre of police officers from the police officer who got the ASTU cadre, and in fact, they started from the IG to the sub-inspector rank. It was from one of the order from the Bihar government. maybe this is a good idea from the PARIMAL Center and the JRC Center within MP. We may like to get a learning from such initiative which has been done. Recently, Kerala had created a new department within their police headquarters, which will be looking after the social schemes which have been implemented from the Kerala police, and IG Vijayan is heading that. So the point that there are noise happening around this idea what Sutapa ma'am has flagged in. It would be good for us from the center. We can take a deep down and come to a conclusion that how well effectively it's working. Just creating like an ASTU, we don't know whether district is facing a trafficking or not. But with our honorable minister under Nirbhaya, all the districts in India will have an ASTU. So whether it's going to be working in the right direction or not, we really need to look at it. That's my point. Thank you.
And one other thing I noticed, it's very unfortunate. The elderly people who are on the verge of retirement or who are physically not so fit, these are the guys who are posted in AHTU and SJPUs. And they are such a demoralized lot. Something which, forced me to reach out to the then UP government and say that please give the AHTUs a Thana recognition, police station recognition. So, we need, it's a huge, big thing. And one other thing which you could try out is, as Abaji said, we have this concept of smart policing. Can we have an assessment of the risk and vulnerabilities of different areas also incorporated into this smart policing concept? If it's already there, then it's okay. Otherwise, we need to have indicators like in the corporate sector, they have the waiver 21. So they have these indices of risks and vulnerabilities. And then they design what policy is okay for this particular organization. Similarly, we can think of these indicators for smart policing. Are there communities which are vulnerable to trafficking? What about the peri-urban areas? Peri-urban areas have become the bedrock of crimes. And the children whom we see on the red light areas, many of them are trafficked. We feel they have their parents with them. They are not parents. They're traffickers. So how does this thing show up on the vulnerability of a city in the smart city format? So these are new things which we should start thinking about, and your platform could be a great platform for all these things. Apart from, I think, IPF could be another one. So we need to now look out of the box, do some out of the box thinking.
Thank you, ma'am. We have Sudha Sattva Bhattacharya also raising her hand. Sudha, please.
Yes. Am I audible?
Yeah, a bit low in volume. Yeah. If
Okay,
you can.
I'll try to be as loud as possible.
Yeah.
My question, I mean, Abha ma'am, I know is gonna start laughing here, but my question is on my favorite premise, which is on false cases, jhoote mamle, right? So, I think one of the consistent narratives that we had seen throughout the implementation was most of the desk officers, not just the desk officers, but all police officers mostly, just giving this very broad blanket claim that most women or most women related cases are sort of a front by their family to push further agenda, some other ulterior motives, or maybe they're using the woman to sort of bring out a false case that eventually probably suppresses the woman herself, right? For example, if it's an underage girl, she's trying to run off with someone from a different caste, and that just opens up a whole can of worms, and the family just thinks kidnapping ka case laga do, and ladke ko andar dal do, hum iski kahin aur shadi kara denge, and all of that. So while the whole premise of real victims comes up a lot, especially in the frontline officers who are motivated enough, who really want to take the agenda forward, but then if they see such cases coming up, then that affects their morale a lot. So my question sort of is to and again this is again putting a lot of expectations on the police, who will not only do their own work but also coordinate with other agencies, and on top of that try to sensitize the public that maybe you know uh, like just bring out a more real narrative out here whenever you're trying to present a case, instead of like putting up false fronts. So is there any way that any kind of outreach can be done on areas like this, so that the public is more aware as to what to expect when they come to the police? Because like the other day, I think I really liked what Mr. Karthikeyan said, that the people who are going to present their cases, they are really worried. They are really afraid of what to say to the police, whether they'll be believed or not. The legitimacy of their claims are questioned, and so this distrust factor, I mean, reducing it from the police's end through sensitivity training is great, but then can we also reach out to the broader community? Sorry, that was a really long question, more of a monologue.
Who's taking up to answer this? Sir. Uh, uh, ma'am, are you taking up this question? Our ma'am? Can you hear us? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. That's my favorite. I mean, I could launch into another 2-day law roundtable. Yes, so that this is it cuts across. It's not just in Madhya Pradesh police, but it cuts across this whole thing of false cases. So, like I said, I would just go back and demonstrate it through the law. That one is that what are you calling a false case? So even a slap will be a 323 IPC. So आप किस चीज को fall, just because the woman goes back, that's what they say, that थोड़े दिन के देर के बाद वो तो if it's a domestic violence, if it's a family thing, उनका आपस में लड़ाई झगड़ा होता है और वो केस करने के लिए. So that is the reason why there is a progression of procedures in the police station. That is why there is such a thing as a DD. There's a Rose Namcha, and then there's a this thing that sorting, and then there's a case affair. Anyway, they're not registering the cases. So to say false cases, so it's a whole mixed thing, and this whole thing of minors running away and all that. That is where the capacity building comes in, but they still resist it. Like, you have to tell them, look, the law says below 18, sex is not allowed with your consent also. So it is the man's or the partner's has to look out for it. I mean, the statutorily the offense has been created. Then they say, फिर और मुश्किल उनको हो जाती है and all that. So this, that's why I said that there have to be very clear messages that, are you okay in sidestepping certain legal parameters because you think that you're actually helping out people, or you're just avoiding unnecessary work because it's going to be a false case? So all that, I think, has to be also administratively sorted out. And it also has to be, like I said, that the fear of reprisal from the community is also very strong, by the way. But I mean, besides the, if you're like, it's a standard practice कि 100-200 लोग आकर के आपके थाने के हाथे में बैठ जाएंगे. So, at that time, then what kind of this thing do you take? So, all of these things have to be given the due weightage. And yes, of course, community awareness is important, but there will be never a time when you can make the community that much aware that they will know all the, all the this thing. They need to know a broad framework of what is going to happen at the police station, and what are the procedures, because even when they come to report, they also don't want reporting. That is another big question which is faced by at the police station, at the help desks, because they'll come and say कि हमें बताना है, आप कुछ कर दो, उसको समझा दो, लेकिन लिखना कुछ नहीं है. अब कोई आया है ना, क्लासिकल पुलिसिंग सेज कि आपके थाने में परिंदा भी फड़केगा तो वो रोजनामचे में रिफ्लेक्ट होना चाहिए, right? And ideally, if everybody starts doing that, you know, it would, I think, make a huge difference in policing. But they say कि लिखे में कुछ मत करो, थोड़ा सा आके उसको हड़का दो. So, you know, that's unpacking, like what we have been doing at the Gulmohar and Urja kind of thing. There's also unpacking the kind of baggage that a vulnerable person is coming with. कोई नहीं आता थाने ऐसे. It's a false, it's a misconception कि उठते से, that's what they say कि आजकल तो औरतें उठते से थाने पहुंच जाती हैं. नहीं आ रही हैं. It's a huge myth which has to be busted कि औरतें उठते से थाने पहुंच जाती हैं. आजकल इनका तो फलानी कम्युनिटी का तो ऐसा रवैया हो गया कि आजकल ये भी बहुत अवेयर हो गए हैं अपने राइट्स के, तो उठते से थाने चले आते हैं. झूठे केस से कहते हैं झूठे केस नहीं. There is a problem there. There is some problem festering there which is making this come to you. So look at it with that third eye, that what is the problem? I mean, where is it located, and what amongst your, maybe just you can just deal with it, not just rejecting, but it can have, very well be done. So, sir, I know you've done this in Vidisha, but you know, you bring it under the law and order functions, and then you make an intervention. Maybe it's not a crime actually hasn't been committed, which needs to be registered, and then follow up. So I think again going back to that, you know, the nuts and bolts are very important for the response at that level.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, Sutapa, ma'am. Yes.
I would just like to add to what Abhaji has said. You know, in any case, Supreme Court has said that if a child goes missing, we were talking of minors. So if a child goes missing, then you have to register a kidnapping or abduction case. And if for 4 months, right, there is no other option. If for 4 months nothing comes up and the child is not recovered, then it is presumed that the child has been trafficked and the whole case gets transferred to HTU. तो इसमें तो गुंजाइश ही नहीं है कुछ और करने का. Number one. Number two, that is where investigation comes in. That capacity of investigation has to be built. भाई कौन मना कर रहा है? आप फाइनल रिपोर्ट लगा दो अगर कुछ नहीं मिल रहा है एविडेंस, or if she comes back, right? So I think this would be travesty of justice and overstepping. अगर कोई मिसिंग बच्ची या बच्चा के बारे में आके बोलता है और we don't write the FIR, we have to. Otherwise, we fall into the purview of Supreme Court ka, and this was in that Bachpan Bachao Andolan case. This was a landmark judgment of Supreme Court. तो option ही नहीं है, वो तो लिखना ही पड़ेगा. या abduction और kidnapping के अंडर में लिखना पड़ेगा. You can't say that नहीं लिखूंगा, क्योंकि कई बार ऐसे हुए हैं कि bodies मिले हैं फिर उसके बाद बच्चे की. So why to take that risk? I don't think this risk should be taken in any way.
Thank you, Sudha. Do you want to, are you satisfied with the answers, or do you want to have more clarification on that? Sudha?
So
I
for
think,
now, I think I'll stay put.
Yeah, I think based on the very clear context of the law itself and its connect with the victim who approaches, like what Aba ma'am and Sutaba ma'am both have said, that to cross the personal geography of your own home to reach out to a justice delivery station itself is perceived to be is a very courageous step for the woman or any victim. And once that formal boundary has been crossed to go out of yourself and out of your comfortable space to seek the services of a formal mechanism or a structure where the justice delivery is supposed to happen is a courageous step for that victim. And so the delivery has to be accordingly as per the law. There is no confusion. So thank you very much there. Yes, ma'am.
Just one small thing, you know, अगर हम लोग ये approach लेंगे, then that thing will come into play. जब मी टू में बोलने लगा कि अरे 50 साल बाद आके FIR लिखा रहे हैं, यार हम लोगों ने लड़कियों को बोलना सिखाया कब? जब बोल पाएगी, जब अपने कंफर्टेबल फील करेगी बोलने को, जब भी जाके बोलेगी ना। सो इस चीज को तो बिल्कुल हम लोग को इरेज करना पड़ेगा। जो जब बोल पा रहा है सुनो, लिखो। एविडेंस नहीं मिलता है, फाइनल रिपोर्ट लगाओ। एविडेंस मिलता है, चार्जशीट लगाओ। So that approach we'll have to take. Now, it was not, I don't think it was easy for Priya Ramani to come out with everything against MJ Akbar. After so many years, she must be having granddaughters. It's not easy for a woman. And बच्ची के लिए और लड़के के लिए, I mean for a child it's even more difficult. वो तो बेचारा समझ ही नहीं पाता है कि उसके साथ sexual abuse हुआ कि क्या हुआ कि क्या नहीं हुआ. So we have to write FIRs, I think, and it has to be completely
I
dealing.
just want to clarify something here, that my question was not about what procedures should be followed. I mean, there is absolutely no question asked that, of course, the procedure that has to be followed will be followed. But my question is more about the morale or the sensitivity of the people who are doing the work, the frontline work, right? I mean, they will be doing all the work, but if they do it begrudgingly, and this is not about cases where I'm sorry, I'm probably not phrasing this right, but I mean, when we're talking about showing sensitivity to victims, we should also, people who are implementers should also be showing sensitivity to the frontline workers who are actually supposed to be doing this work, right? So on that note, I just want to bring out or pull out or reference this one fantastic analysis done by Rukmini Srinivasan, who's an investigative journalist, and she's looked at a slew of cases, or all women-related cases, and this is a very long time back. But what she's seen is that all of these cases, or most of these, once they are investigated upon by the police and then they go to the they go to the court, it breaks apart. It falls down because there is no proper investigation that has been done. That's partly because the police did not have anything to report. And here I will not take names, but I've heard our own allies who have come and said that समझ में आ रहा है कि false case है, but क्या कर सकते हैं? We can't go back and say कि no, or like, you know, do a turnaround and lead to the other investigation, which sort of opens up a can of worms. So then they're like, क्या करेंगे? खात्मा लगाएंगे, खार्चे लगाएंगे, जो होना है केस में कोर्ट में होने दो. And once the case goes to the court, it's just a pile of paperwork without any proper backing to it, and that is also something that adds to the administrative burdens of these people and sort of burns them down even further. So that is where my question is, that there is no question that the procedures have to be followed. But then what else can we do? Apart from following the procedures, what else can we do?
तो इन्वेस्टिगेशन के बाद चार्जशीट लगा क्यों रहे हैं अगर एविडेंस नहीं है तो? If it's not prosecution ready, भेज क्यों रहे हैं चार्जशीट? वहाँ फाइनल रिपोर्ट लगा के खत्म करें.
Ma'am, here we also have one more like observation from the chat box. Our inspector who looks after it, Rajni, wants to say something. Rajni, आप कुछ कहेंगी? रजनी तिवारी, आप कुछ कहना चाह रही थी अपने चैट बुक? या बोलिए.
सर ऑडिबल हूँ?
जी हाँ, आप हैं, ऑडिबल है.
सर बस यही कहना चाह रही थी, जैसा कि आदरणीय आभा मैम ने बताया, ऑब्जर्वेशन एक ये भी है कि महिलाएं बहुत बार छोटी छोटी घटनाओं की रिपोर्ट्स हमारे पास बार बार लेके आती रहती हैं और हम उन पर वो प्रॉपर कार्रवाई ही नहीं करते हैं जैसा वो हमसे मदद एक्सपेक्ट करके आए थे. तो सपोज आपके समय में ही सर हमने एक केस देखा था जिसमें एक महिला 11 बार आदम चेक लिखा के आई थी. लगातार उसका हर महीने में आदम चेक रजिस्टर हो रहा था, पर फिर भी पुलिस ने अनावेदकों के खिलाफ कोई कार्रवाई नहीं की थी. इस केस में फॉर्चुनेटली वो हमारे पास आई, हमने उसकी मदद की. पर ऐसा होता कि यदि कोई से ये बोलने वाला मिल जाता कि तुम ये छोटी छोटी मारपीट की रिपोर्ट लिखा रहे, इससे कुछ नहीं होगा, इसकी जगह छेड़खानी का या बलात्कार का केस लगा दो तो शायद ज्यादा आसानी से तुम्हारी सुनवाई होगी और ये हमेशा के लिए जेल में बंद हो जाएगा. तो सर्टेनली फिर वो अपने रिपोर्ट को कुछ गंभीर बना करके हमारे तक लेकर के आती. तो प्राइमरी जब रिपोर्ट आ रही है अगर महिला की, हम प्रॉपर सुनवाई करके उसको वो सहायता देते जब हमसे चाह रही, तो शायद इस तरीके की घटनाएं रुकेंगी. ये जो फेक रिपोर्ट वाला सामने आता है बार बार सर।
मैडम आप लोग कुछ बोलना चाहेंगे इस पर?
आई थिंक दैट्स अ वेरी वैलिड, इसीलिए मैंने 323 बोला। मैं पुलिस में कभी बात करती हूँ तो अगर मैं उनको बोलती हूँ कि एक पति के खिलाफ जो है 509 या 354 या 354 के कुछ भी वो क्यों नहीं रख सकते, तो वो उनके लिए इट्स अ सरप्राइज फॉर देम, इट्स अ सरप्राइज फॉर देम कि नहीं वो तो पति के खिलाफ कैसे ले रहे, क्यों पति क्या किसी औरत का मर्यादा भंग नहीं कर सकता? वो जो आपको बात बता रही है वो 509 में आती है या 354 में या 323 में आ रही है। 323 तो चलो सिंपल आर्ट इज नॉट कॉग्निजेबल, बट देन देयर आर अदर कॉग्निजेबल, उसको धमकियां दे रहे हैं, वो कर रहे हैं। सो यही जो अब बोले कि अनलेस इट इज अ 498A, अब वो ही सीख रहे कि अगर 498A में भी जो अंडरस्टैंडिंग है वो ये है कि वो दहेज की धारा है और दहेज की कोई बात नहीं हो रही है, बट वो दहेज की धारा है ही नहीं है, धारा में लिखा ही नहीं है। एंड व्हेन यू रीड देम थ्रू 498A एंड से कि आप बताइए कि इसमें दहेज की कहाँ बात हो रही है, क्या 498A का क्लासिक केस किस तरह से पहचाना जाता है, देन इट्स सो again, I mean, I would just go back to, that seeing that the law actually embodies a lot, and the thoroughness with which we take apart the ingredients of offenses and say that the law is mandating you to look into this and to intervene. That's why it's put there in the IPC or in any particular special act. तो आपको कार्रवाई करनी है ये संज्ञेय है तो संज्ञेय की कार्रवाई करेंगे, और अगर असंज्ञेय है तो असंज्ञेय की कार्रवाई भी सीआरपीसी में दी हुई है। ऐसा नहीं कि आपको खाली वापस मोड़ना है कि कुछ भी नहीं है। सो and then of course the other kind of the administrative things like Dr. Kapoor has done, I've seen in Vidisha, to bring together all these things so that these borderline cases which are lie between the criminal and the civil also, maybe it's just a marriage or a relationship that's not working out, उनको क्या गाइडेंस देनी चाहिए आगे, कहाँ पर गाइड करना चाहिए, दैट वी हैव टू बिल्ड आवर ओन कैपेसिटी एट दैट पॉइंट टू बी एबल टू say. But like Sanyal, like ma'am, you said that you just can't turn away people like that because they have come after a long process of, I mean, they have been that harrowed that they have needed to step out of their comfort zone and to come to a police station.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Now we come to close to our time slot. Thank you for your comments. Tiwari sir, would you like to make any comment before? You have done a lot of research on FIRs and registration of crime. So before we close up, we like a brief statement of yours, sir. We have just 2 more minutes, and then I'll invite Aruna Rao, ma'am, to finally conclude. Yes. Yes, sir.
Actually, I have 2 observations I have as we were discussing, Avadi and Sanyal madam has said. I was also discussing here with some police officers in Mumbai, nearby commissionerate. So, one problem is they are facing several cases of below 18 years of sexual intercourse consensus, by consensus. Now, family members, they come and they say you register the case of rape and kidnapping, although they know that the girl has gone with consent. But I think there is also a legal issue which police is also struggling. And I think this is one issue where, and also one study which I was also part of that for International Justice Mission. They were doing follow-up of these all homes under the Juvenile Justice Act, under Sampur Vera case. And many cases are also reported of this kind where there was the consensus, but you see, since below 18 years they were below. So looking into this, the juvenile justice people also said, and many police official ground level said that there is a need to change the law. So I don't know. I mean, that is also one area which is emerging, that what can be done. And second thing which Sanyal madam was also saying about this specialization. Madam, my own understanding is this, that somehow in our Indian police system, like if you see the enforcement of the these social legislation. And all these are social legislation for women, for children, for scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, minorities. Now, this could not come in the center stage. Even if we will see like the portfolio which is given, the transfer and the way the posting is being done, I think there is a need to revisit the entire training policy and the placement policy, and somehow the internalization should come within the organizational developmental perspective in the police organization. That if suppose one is posted in the ATS unit or XYZ high profile kind of unit which would be looking the high profile cases. Equally important is that these kind of desk and the specialized kind of job. I think that kind of thorough restructuring of the department, also the thinking, and there is a need to bring all stakeholders, men also in the same debate that you see, men officers, that job is also equally important. That's all. I think this is a brief of it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for these comments, and they definitely resonate with what our all three panelists have been saying, and a very fruitful discussion also came up around that. I would now request Aruna Mohan Rao ma'am, who's our special DG, to kindly give her comments and her point of view. Madam Rao, please. Ma'am, can you hear us? Ma'am, Aruna Mohan Rao ma'am. I think she's not able to hear us. Just okay. So we'll conclude it now, and I think the very fruitful discussion came around the very context of taking up today's topic, which was related to addressing vulnerabilities and exclusion. And definitely there is a lot of problem there. We can see the kind of discussions happening and the kind of concern all our panelists have, all our participants have. I would particularly like to thank Satya Prakash from FXB India Suraksha and Sudha Sattva Bhattacharya from JPAL for the comments, and also to Rajni and to Rashmi, my colleagues, who have been participating and giving their views. Thank you so much, Sutapa ma'am, for a very animated discussion around this subject. And some of our trainees are joining today, and they are writing to me that they were very inspired by your viewpoints. So thank you so much for that. Thank you, Ava ma'am, for the kind of passion you bring to the whole forum, and for all the interventions you made today, for the discussions you did, and to Professor Tiwari, sir, for all your research-based articulation on the subject, and to the direction which we must be taking up for the future. I'm very happy and thankful to for the kind of discussion we could have today, and it was just because of the forum which we have. I thank all participating guests for today's discussion. We have our last discussion tomorrow, and that would also conclude our series. I would request all of you to kindly be a part to that. This will be on 12th March at 7 p.m. because some of our panelists are from the US. So they, for their convenience, we have kept that time. and IDFC Institute would be participating along with Professor Peter Oakes from the University of Virginia, and also we have participation by Professor Akshay Mangla from University of Oxford, taking up tomorrow's discussion on state capacity and rights at the interface of security, justice, and community, which again it touches this context which we are discussing today. And as you mentioned about community and its interface with the law and security and justice, it should be a fruitful discussion tomorrow as well. We would all request all of you to be kindly sparing some time for tomorrow's discussion. I profusely am extremely thankful for today's discussion and your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for nice discussion. Thank you.
You should call it campfire.
Thank you, sir.
You should.
Really, I love.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
So
Campfire.
tomorrow's roundtable should be, campfire.
Okay, ma'am. So we'll.
I love the acronyms you've come up with. PARIMAL, Urja.
Ma'am, this is all Anuradha Shankar, ma'am.
Oh, great.
Her
बहुत
creativity.
बढ़िया.
This
मजा
is
आ गया.
her
मजा.
creativity. Thank you, Anuradha,
Ma'am.
ma'am, for these beautiful and this Jiva, ma'am. You have seen this Jiva. This is also. This is justice, inclusion, and victims.
Yes, I know. Anuradha's done a great job. Jiva was incidentally a film also. एक film भी था. बड़े अच्छे गाने थे उसमें.
So
Great.
I think
Thank
you are already setting the stage for tomorrow's virtual campfire. So we have virtual roundtable. Now we'll have virtual campfire.
Virtual campfire. Okay. Bye. Take
Thank
care,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Thanks, sir.